Hello and welcome to the Grapeseed Official Podcast. It's Take a Step time, and we are up to Unit 9 in this series. So far, we have done examples of many of the component types, with the focus of the last episode on the Big Book Pink, although that served as a gateway to a larger discussion on the shifting focus of shared reading poems and big books. So what will be new here this week? You've probably already read the title of this podcast, so the cat is already out of the bag. We received a request from a particular teacher, who will remain nameless, for the Unit 9 material we should talk about. They asked that we discuss My First Book of Poems, citing that it was their least favorite story in the unit, and through hearing an episode about it, they might gain a new appreciation for it. I think that is a feeling most Grapeseed teachers can relate to. Of course, we do our best to not show it to our students, but naturally, we are bound to like some components more than others. Sometimes the component we didn't like very much at first becomes one we enjoy teaching after seeing student reactions or understanding more how the component is woven into the greater Grapeseed tapestry. A few teachers have mentioned Rude Rude Kitty was one example for them. So, for those of you who aren't big fans of My First Book of Poems, let's see if we can turn that around. I think one of the first things that catches teachers off guard is the nature of the story itself. It isn't one long continuous story. We aren't walking around looking at different clothes with Little Monkey in Unit 2 or eating too many sweets and getting sick like Sad Sam. In this story, each teaching card is a different short poem without an overarching story, aside from the last page saying that, hey, it's a bunch of poems we like. The closest story structurally is probably Birthday Fun in Unit 7, where different children are talking about their birthdays, what they got, and how the weather was. The delivery of My First Book of Poems and the initial reception by the students is likely to be a bit awkward if we aren't prepared to teach it well. So what's the point of this component? What are we trying to achieve? As always, we can look in our teacher manual to find the answers we seek. There are quite a few learning objectives here, but I will highlight a few on this podcast. Express a preference about favorite poems. Listen to and participate in conversations. Listen to words that rhyme. Now, before some explanation of context, let's look at the quick checks as well. Early exposures. Are students beginning to answer questions about the story? Middle exposures. Can students use complete sentences to answer questions about the story? End exposures. Are students able to recognize words that rhyme in the story? Okay, that's a lot to throw at you all at once. Pause for a second and think about those. Some Grapeseed components focus on introducing new vocabulary or expressions. Some focus more on general English competency, not teaching new concepts, but reinforcing things students already know and or bringing language together in new contexts. After hearing those learning objectives and quick checks, which one is this? To me, it feels like the latter. Both of these types are very important. Just because we have a story called Me Too in Unit 5 and focus on Me Too as a target expression in it, it doesn't mean students will forever remember how, when, and in what context to use the new expression, especially as they learn new vocabulary and expressions in later units. We need other components to give a chance for students to reflect on and combine those vocabulary and expressions they have learned into new, novel ideas. My First Book of Poems will help us with this, with an added touch of focusing on rhyming, which is a concept of print and something we have been talking about for many units now. This leads us into a brief discussion on Mikolos' favorite topic besides his kids, the affective filter. Remember that the affective filter is made up of factors like anxiety, confidence, and motivation. Let's look at what we just discussed, the two general types of components, through the lens of the affective filter. Learning new concepts can motivate some students as they want to figure out what this new language puzzle is and what it means. For others, it might make them anxious. What about the second type of the more general or review components? Those are a huge boost to student confidence. From the first exposure, students will be listening to a new story and they might think consciously or subconsciously, wait, I understand this. You out there listening, if you are multilingual, what did it feel like when you were first able to start understanding conversations around you in your non-native language? Pretty fantastic, right? That can be our students in each new unit as they are exposed to the spiral curriculum of Grapeseed. Time for the lesson plans themselves. We teach this for the first time right in Lesson 1. Unsurprisingly, we simply do the vocab cards and tell the story expressively. We do make a bit of a show of showing the cover and reading the title, another concept of print, but really, this is nothing new for the students at this point. With this exposure, the students get to simply listen and enjoy another new component in Unit 9 and focus solely on trying to comprehend each of the poems in it.
Goodbye, my friends, goodbye. I'm sad to say goodbye. It was a good day, but now I will say goodbye, my friends, goodbye. Goodbye, everyone.